So here's the thing about WWE booking people that don't appear to make a lot of sense. They don't care. Like, at all. There are very few people on earth that WWE won't book if Endeavor and TKO think they can make money. Brock Lesnar's return at SummerSlam 2025 proves this. While Lesnar isn't a defendant in Janelle Grant's lawsuit against Vince McMahon and WWE, his name is cited 44 times in the lawsuit, which at the time of recording was still outstanding. Lesnar's return drew a huge pop in the arena and a similarly huge critical response online, and understandably so. What TKO did in this case was decide that after paying Lesnar millions and millions of dollars to sit at home for close to 2 years, enough backlash had subsided and they'd make a bunch of money if they put him on TV again. That might sound cold and brutal, but it's also the truth. WWE don't care is the point. They'll use anyone they think can turn a spreadsheet row from red to green. The names on this list aren't as severe as Brock Lesnar, admittedly, but even in this era of emphasizing moments and returns above all else, none of them should be on TKO's shortlist to return to WWE anytime soon, whether that's because they've been up to no good or they just don't fit the product. I'm Andy from What Culture, and here are 8 wrestlers WWE must never bring back. Number 8. Matt Riddle. Once considered amongst the most prodigiously promising and talented combat sports athletes in the real and scripted worlds, Matt Riddle has blundered his way out of 2 TKO organizations at this point, meaning it's extremely unlikely that we'll ever see him in WWE again. Riddle was a standout indie wrestler as soon as he arrived on the scene in 2015, and he quickly emerged as one of the most consistent in-ring performers around. With elite-level athleticism, a hard-hitting style, unique charisma, and a real and genuine pedigree from his MMA days, Riddle shone brightly on a scene led by the likes of Chris Hero and Zack Sabre Jr., who may have dwarfed Riddle in terms of experience, but Riddle, alongside them, did not look out of place at all, despite his rookie status. Inevitably catching WWE's eye in 2018, Riddle was a huge hit in NXT, working with the likes of Adam Cole and the Undisputed Era, before eventually transporting to the main roster. Even in 2023, months before he was let go, Riddle was hugely prominent, starring alongside Randy Orton as one half of RK Bro before his departure from WWE was announced that September. Controversy has followed Riddle almost everywhere he's been across the past 5 years, and from the dropped Candy Cartwright lawsuit of 2020 to allegations of infidelity from his ex-wife, Riddle has proven himself a magnet for trouble. Even before entering wrestling, however, he was involved in several public spats with UFC President Dana White, having failed several drug tests while under the MMA market leader's banner. And, well, we all know who owns the UFC now in 2025. You can never say never in wrestling, but given that no other major company is booking Riddle with any regularity in 2025, it isn't fair to assume that mainstream wrestling has passed him by. Number 7. Enzo Amore. The thing about Enzo Amore is that he is so electric on the microphone, he makes Nikola Tesla look like he's sitting in a cave rubbing a couple of sticks together. Even today, years removed from his peak popularity, Amore is a hugely charismatic presence blessed with a gift of the gab. His sharp one-liners, funny barbs, and pitch-perfect husky delivery set him aside from his peers and probably should have made him a multi-millionaire in wrestling by now. But the other thing about Enzo Amore is that as a wrestler, he's kinda bad. He is the badly drawn horse meme come to life, with his microphone skills, the elegantly composed back half, and his actual wrestling a cartoonish juvenile mess. Simon Gotch once claimed that Enzo was such a stinker between the ropes he broke his own leg trying to counter a wrist lock. This may or may not have been exaggerated for YouTube clicks, but you don't need to have Vern Gagne's eye to identify that Enzo, for all his charismatic talents, was lagging, shall we say, in the ring. Amore is so far behind WWE's working standards that the company should only ever consider bringing him back as a manager. But even then, Enzo got himself in so many backstage pickles over the year that it just isn't worth the hassle. His final year or so in WWE was rife with rumors of backstage heat, including talk that he was kicked out of the locker room at one point, so let's just leave this one alone. Number 6. The Dudley Boyz. When SmackDown's biggest and brightest tag teams fought in a TLC match at SummerSlam 2025, WWE brought in the Hardy Boys and the Dudley Boys to sit at ringside, watching on as the new generation went all out in a stipulation made famous by Bubba Ray, Devon, Matt, and Jeff, and oh yeah, a couple of guys called Edge and Christian too. I wonder why they weren't there. Sarcasm aside, it was a pretty obvious bit of nostalgia, a really nice, easy thing to do, and WWE were right to do it. But as far as using the Hardys and the Dudleys in the future goes, one of these teams could be useful in a wrestling capacity again, but the other one? Not so much. Matt and Jeff might not be crashing around the ring like they did in their 20s, but they can still do just about enough to get younger teams over, as proven by their recent work in TNA and in WWE with Raxium. If WWE wants to use them again in that capacity, say on Raw or SmackDown, then great, go for it. They'd get a big pop, and assuming they put the other team over, it could do a lot for the team that beats them. But Bubba and Devon, that's a different matter. Bubba just had one of the worst wrestling matches of the year with Zilla Fatu for House of Glory, and he had the worst match of 2024 versus the former Jinder Mahal for Maple Leaf Pro just a couple of months before that. And Devon has had so many health problems over the years that putting him in the ring again would just be crazy. One last Hardy Boys versus Dudley Boys match has been teased at the time of recording over in TNA. Unless Bubba and Devon somehow come out blasting like it's 2001, however, WWE should not use this as an example to follow, and we should all just leave the memories alone. Number 5, Alberto Del Rio. Weirdly, Dirty Bertie Del Rio might be the likeliest name on this list to actually return to WWE in the near future. WWE owns AAA now, and Alberto is a major star in Mexico, to the extent that AAA fans have completely rejected El Hijo del Vikingo as the mega champion just because he beats Del Rio. You know, the same Vikingo who happens to be one of the most spectacular wrestlers in the world. He's a pretty difficult guy to dislike, and Alberto is a pretty difficult guy to like, but hey, it's AAA. Now going by Alberto El Patron or just Alberto, Del Rio is 48 years old and a seasoned WWE wrestler with 2 runs in the company on his resume. During his first run with WWE, he was a 2-time United States champion and a 4-time world champion as well, although he didn't quite make the mark as an era-defining Mexican star that WWE hoped he would become. The thing about Del Rio, however, is that he comes with more baggage than a luggage handler at Heathrow Airport. From the messy nature of his split with Saraya to the completely unrelated sexual assault and kidnapping charges that were ultimately cleared in 2021, Alberto's name has been in the headlines a lot for bad reasons. Reports on whether or not WWE would actually consider using him vary, but TKO isn't exactly a company known for its scruples. And with Nick Khan of the opinion that unless somebody has been convicted, they are fair to use, we can't exactly rule it out. Number 4. Velveteen Dream. Once upon a time, Velveteen Dream was one of the most exciting young stars in all of wrestling, exploding with charisma as he launched a Prince-inspired purple-clad character in NXT in 2017. Patrick Clark, who was just 21 years old at the time, looked like he was heading all the way to the top. He had a magnetism that cannot be taught in any number of performance center classes, and while he was still putting it together between the ropes, rivalries with the likes of Aleister Black helped him get a great deal of experience. In a very short time, Velveteen Dream became one of the most must-see prospects of the decade. He was over as hell and appeared destined to break out as a massive NXT success story with the perfect gimmick to help him stand out amongst all the gruff, serious wrestlers that were emerging from developmental at the time. But it all came tumbling down for Dream in the 2020s. In and out of action in 2020, he was released by WWE the following May, having not been on television for 5 months. The previous April, he had been accused of sending indecent images to underage boys via Instagram. WWE claims to have investigated the issue at the time and said that they found no signs of wrongdoing, but they eventually dispensed with Clark, who has barely made a mark on wrestling since he was let go. In August 2022, the former Dream was then arrested on first-degree battery and trespassing charges, pleading not guilty before being arrested again for possessing drug paraphernalia 6 days later. The battery and trespassing charges were dropped, but despite once looking like a future WrestleMania main eventer, Velveteen Dream's wrestling career is effectively dead. Number 3. Shane McMahon. This one is a little bit different to the other entries. Shane McMahon isn't here because he's been involved in some nasty business or major controversies, but because, well, he's Shane McMahon, and it's 2025. The self-proclaimed best in the world has outlived his use in WWE. His return to feud with The Undertaker ahead of WrestleMania all that time ago did help a lot in terms of shifting tickets that year, and his crazy stunt shows with the likes of AJ Styles and the Graveyard Dogs were great value, but you only need to look at his last appearance in WWE to see where the problem lies. A mystery opponent for The Miz at WrestleMania 39, Shane walked out to a big pop, cut an impromptu promo, drew maybe ironic chants of "you've still got it," and then promptly tore his quad muscle on a leapfrog. This came just 15 months after Royal Rumble 2022, where Shane's own dad let him go from WWE for trying to book himself to look stronger than several full-time wrestlers, including former MMA star Matt Riddle, who he was presumably gonna trade strikes with? Shane is now 55 years old. If I was him, I would just be sitting around, being rich, not worrying about getting back in the ring, risking serious injury, and all that other embarrassing stuff like he did at WrestleMania, or pissing off the entire locker room like he did at the Rumble. But we all know that Shane McMahon is not wired that way. He's probably sitting there right now, trying to figure out how he can work his way to going over Cody Rhodes or beating John Cena in his final match, swimming through piles of Jordan shoes like Scrooge McDuck. Number 2, John Laurinaitis. And so we land on the least likely person to ever return to WWE on this list. Why is that, you ask? Because John Laurinaitis has flip-flopped his way through Janelle Grant's lawsuit so many times, you might mistake him for a dying goldfish. And at the time of recording, Johnny Ace was actively participating against the company and Vince McMahon in the lawsuit. So yeah, while we all like to say never in wrestling, this is one WWE return that we can probably look at and safely say never. Let's not forget either that Laurinaitis was initially a defendant in the lawsuit. Grant filed the case against WWE McMahon and John Laurinaitis initially, but Johnny Ace was removed as a defendant after agreeing to provide evidence against Vince and WWE in May 2025. Previously, Laurinaitis had appeared to switch sides in February 2024 when Janelle Grant's lawyer described him as a victim of McMahon, before Laurinaitis switched to publicly supporting Vince again just 3 months later. The guy is a worm. Grant's lawsuit alleged as well that Laurinaitis was one of the individuals that McMahon recruited as part of a sex trafficking and coercion ploy. Laurinaitis is, by all accounts, a deeply slimy human being who has raised the ire of everybody from CM Punk and Mick Foley to Jim Ross and Jim Cornette over the years, and somebody who shouldn't be anywhere near a major wrestling promotion in 2025. And at number 1, Vince McMahon. Oh boy, here we go. So the thing about Vince McMahon is that his WWE return is definitely going to happen. I believe it is a matter of when, not if, based on a recent report from the Wrestling Observer's Dave Meltzer stating that Nick Khan believes the only thing that makes somebody unbookable is an actual conviction. A conviction in one of the many lawsuits currently filed against Vince may preclude WWE from using him, but at the same time, I'm not sure we should look at a sleazy group like TKO and trust that even if the hammer of justice fell on McMahon, they wouldn't just find a way to put him on TV anyway. I'm not saying that they'll put him back in charge of creative or reintroduce him as a regular TV character, but TKO's modus operandi is to wait for the backlash to subside a little bit, gauge public opinion, and do the thing. It happened with Brock Lesnar, and if the Janelle Grant lawsuit ends in a settlement or arbitration, Vince McMahon will probably be welcomed back to WWE with open arms. He is unquestionably one of the biggest and most significant names in wrestling history, and the most identifiable wrestling promoter of all time. He is also somebody accused of sex trafficking, sexual assault, and a myriad other awful things, none of which will ever matter to an entity that doesn't make decisions based on pesky little things like ethics and morals, and only looks for capital M moments and business metrics. If TKO thinks it can get away with booking Vince McMahon, it will book Vince McMahon. Make no mistake about it.